losses. There was another test.
Yes, let's go to
happened.
Bulawayo.
Yeah, back to Bulla, where Ireland played Zimbabwe. It was not televised in Ireland, which sucks.
Yeah, I can just only recommend that people subscribe to Nathan John's blog, who was on our show last year when we did our Ireland special in Dublin. Nath's now living in London, but still covers the Irish team in the way that he does independently. It's worth just like subscribing to it because that's a great source of Irish cricket news. And he has the depth, he has the space rather to go into depth on things like this. So if you want to know why this test wasn't, I'm not going to paraphrase, but it's worth reading. If you're curious about how you can even have a situation where Ireland are playing a test match where it's not on TV in Ireland. It seems such a bizarre thing to say, but there is a process that goes on with the rights that Nathan explains in great depth.
Right. Well, what they missed was a belter of a test match and an Irish away win that will be remembered by those who were there, those who saw it for a long time, because I was watching this on day one, on morning one, and they were screwed. Like Ireland were, Blessing was Rabani, was ripping them up. They were, if we're scoring in terms of wickets falling first, they were 2 for 17, 3 for 19, 4 for 20, 5 for 31. So their best players were all gone. Balbirnie was gone. Sterling was gone. Harry Tector, Curtis Campher. So they had Lorcan Tucker in, who's their next best hope, who made 30-odd. They were 6 for 82 when he got out. So they're sunk, right? Like they're not – but the thing that tends to happen with Ireland is that it's always Mark Adair and Andy McBride somehow find a way to make runs. It seems like so much of the time it's those two being relied upon. It was Adair. It was those two, wasn't it, at Lords? When they were screwed. They do it again here. So 90 not out for McBride, 78 for Mark Adair, who loves hitting a 4, hit 13 boundaries on the way. They put on 127 together. They got Ireland to 260. So suddenly they've got a credible score. They're in the game. Muzarabani took 4 in that early burst and then came back to break that partnership, then clean up the tail, takes 3 more, ends up with 7 for 58. Second best figures ever for Zimbabwe. Paul Strang, the leggy, took an 8 for at one point, and that's the only one ahead of what Musrabani did.
Yeah, he's got an unbelievable test record. He averages 21 in test cricket. It's just a shame that like someone like him isn't given more opportunities to play, and that's a function of Zim being outside of the WTC.
Australia should be playing him. They will play a test in England later this year. So Zimbabwe end up getting a lead, but a tiny lead, single figures leads. So Nick Welch makes 90, who's a sort of battling county pro-ish, hasn't played a huge amount of first class, but probably played 30-odd games and averaged about 30 in first-class cricket, having done the rounds for some county second 11 teams and that sort of thing. Doesn't get a lot of support. So down at number 10, who should it be but poor old Blessing Muzarabani has to come out and make the runs as well. Makes 47 and gets out trying to absolutely heave one into space to try to get to his half century with a massive shot and loses his stumps. So he's the second best scorer on the card. It gets them a lead of 6, I think it was. In the end, Andy McBride takes 3 for, Mark Adair takes 2 for. So basically 3 players doing everything up to this point, making the runs, taking the wickets, although Big Bad Barry McCarthy took 4 for 75. So turns into a shootout. Ireland then make 298 in the third innings. Better, more composed innings. The top 6 all at least get into double figures. There are some 20s, some 40s. Belbo makes 66. Lorcan Tucker makes 58. Balbirnie's captaining this side again as well, this test side, which is interesting because there's been some ducks and drakes with the leadership of that side.
Yeah, he's kept the test captaincy and given up the other ones. So, but this is a resilient Irish team. There was some stat doing the rounds on the blog that I read, Association of Statisticians and Historians, where I think it was like the 7th worst start in Test cricket to win a match at 5 for 31. And that demonstrates that. Yeah, McBride has a habit of this at Test level of coming in. He's batted as high as 3, I reckon, for Ireland in Test matches, but coming in down the list, primarily picked as a bowler, but then saving their ass with the bat. So I think that he is a player who is one of real substance and has shown his wider worth, because before he was making runs alone, he wasn't getting picked as routinely, but now he's a genuine double threat.
Yeah. Well, he's, was a huge part of the difference for him in this game. And by the third innings, Blessing was knackered, only took 1 for 70, so didn't get the 10-wicket match, sadly. Richard Ngrava took 4 for 55, who was the best of the bowlers. So They set 292 was the target, and Zimbabwe gave it a decent shake, all out for 228. In the end, they had Wesley Mataveri 84, but he was the second last out, so was up against it at the end, trying to do it with the tail. And the wickets, the cleanup of the wickets wasn't McBride, it wasn't Adair, it was a 22-year-old Matthew Humphreys, who's a left-arm orthodox spinner, who to that point, he's playing his third test. He was in the last innings of his third test and only had 2 wickets in his career to that point. And then he strikes gold. He takes 6 for 57, 6 of the last 8 to fall, bowls them out. For those on Ben Curran watch, he only made 4 and 12 if you're playing along at home. But yeah, huge turnaround win and an important one for Ireland.
The big humper, 6 for. Good on him. And yeah, Zim's an interesting team, like Jonathan Campbell leading them. He's only the third captain on debut in the last 50 years. Lee Jamon's the other notable one. But yeah, the son of Alistair, who led Zimbabwe in Test cricket as well. So a bit of a pedigree, you would say, there for Jonathan Campbell. But yeah, it feels like obviously they'll be gutted to lose a test at home, and it's a big moment for Ireland as well. They've won 3 on the trot, and this is again a Nate Johns stat which I haven't got in front of me, and I'm going to poorly explain, but I read it on the plane yesterday. It's the first time in like 100 years where a team that's won their first test has gone on to win 3 on the bounce. So, like this is not nothing. This is not nothing. It's not everything. It's not, we're not saying that Ireland are going to, be admitted to the World Test Championship. However, if we get divisions, and, there's a lot of stuff about tiers. I hate how tiers and divisions get conflated. Divisions, all about it. That story that Brady wrote about Allardyce goes into how it's quite attractive to the TV companies having a second division. Because what does that mean? You get a one-off final for a spot in Division 1. That's a huge thing, right? Each 2 years, you would have a game that would mean an awful lot as it relates to the next 2 years of Test cricket. But divisions, 2 of 6 or a 5 and a 7 or a 7 and a 5, or indeed a 7 and a 6 if Scotland can get full member status in the years to come, or some version of that. That would provide Zimbabwe and Ireland to play a lot more very meaningful Test cricket. The test in all of this is, will there be credible league structures put in place, or will they just revert to the best and the rest, which will mean the second tier don't have much Test cricket at all, and it's like these one-offs and so on. Saying all of that, that's the third test that Zimbabwe have played at home in about 4 weeks, so that's a step in the right direction.
Sheffield Shield, the last couple of games wrapped up shortly before we recorded, so I've been keeping an eye on that. Sam Constas came back early to play, didn't make many, but he was there. Pretty intense round this, actually. A couple of, one good finish and a fair bit of wild topsy-turvy stuff happening. Perhaps we start in Perth.
Sure.
The Whackers versus the Sackers. The other Nathan Mook, the forgotten Nathan Mook. It's all been about Sweeney, but now it's about Andrew. This is a test of a first-class match was over in 2 days. 20 wickets fell on day 1 at the Wacker. Nobody reached 50 in the match. Doing a bit. WA all out 120 batting first. Sam Fanning made 49. Nobody else made a run. Doggett, Buckingham, Liam Scott shared the wickets around. Only 1 wicket for Nathan McAndrew in that first innings, which did not presage what was to come. South Australia, all out 124. Jason Sanger makes 45. Brodie Couch, 4 for. Midnight in Joel Paris, 2 for 34. Rockacholi took 3 for 10. Absurd. So, must have been doing something for spin as well, rather than just being a wild-seeming pitch. And then in the third innings, the lights really go up. Nathan McAndrew takes what I'd like to call a petrol station, 7 for 11. He took 7 for 11 in the innings. Buckingham, the other 3. They bowl out WA for 66. Ashton Turner made half the runs. He made 30, which left them 63 to chase, and they were 4 down getting it as well, so it wasn't entirely smooth sailing, South Australia. So an absolute shootout at the old Wacker, not at the new Perth Stadium. Yeah,
and Gideon had this, that it was 763 balls in the match, which make it the shortest outright result in the 133-year history of domestic first-class cricket. I assume that's in Australia, so there was a historical anchor for that as well. Yeah, such a brief outright result. Remarkable stuff there. And yeah, I saw some of the highlights of that. It was lively. It does mean that South Australia are staying on top of the ladder, and they've got 2 home games in their final 3, I'm pretty sure. So they're in I know that it's congested at the top and the whole comp is separated by less than a full game, so it could turn on its head very quickly in the last 3 rounds. But the fact that SA are in pole position and they've got 2 of their last 3 at home, good on them. They could make a Shield final at Adelaide Oval.
their captain coming back, which
Yeah,
you would think would help with McSweeney
Good
back
point.
in the mix. The Vicks, meanwhile, went to Tasmania, went to Hobart. Tassie
Yeah.
all out for
What a game.
256. Yeah, this ended spicily. Aidan O'Connor, top score with 53. They were very even with the wickets. 2 for Sam Elliott, for Fergus O'Neill, for Will Sutherland, for Peter Siddle, still doing the business, and 2 run-outs. So they shared everything around. The Vicks made 258. So, I mean, all of these games, like the Test match, then into this one, there are these very tight first innings margins between the sides. Vicks made 258. Harry Dixon, 66. Lawrence Neil-Smith, the final word zone, only took 1 for.
So Harry Dixon, St Kilda, Aussie 19s, big raps on this bloke, as in they reckon he's the best of that generation that came through the 19s. That's the one that includes Constas. So that's a significant little marker there that he's got his first chance for Victoria and made 66 right away.
Talked about Sam Elliott in the first innings. It's another Elliott. Kieran, who takes 4 for 55. Ding Dong. Gabe Bell, 3 for 33. Third innings, wild again. A 53%er for Jake Weatherald, who we talked about a few weeks ago, going, why doesn't Jake Weatherald ever get in the conversation as an opener? 155 out of 291. Raf McMillan down the order made 47, so they made 69% of the runs between them, those two. Curious scorecard, this one. Fergus O'Neill, Rob O'Neill's dog, and Peter Siddle took 3 each. So they set the Vicks 270. Victoria were trying to chase that just before we recorded, and it was Hanscom trying to do it and almost doing it. He's putting these partnerships together, little partnerships all the way down the card, and then a couple of slightly bigger ones with the Sams, first with Sam Elliott, then with Sam Harper. He's moving towards 100 himself, and then a late burst of wickets. Will Sutherland gets out. Fergus O'Neill gets out. And on 93, 20 runs short of the win, Hanscom is dismissed. It's Kieran Elliott again, who ends up with 6 for 84, so 10 wickets for the match for K. Elliott. Gabe Bell takes another 3. Extraordinary finish. Vicks nearly get there, and Tasmania did so well to keep cool at the death.
This was a hell of a finish. I was watching some of it on telly this morning, and when Will Sutherland was batting with Hanscom, Sutherland was eighth out. So they've lost 3 for 5 at the end. I think all of them were to Kieran Elliott. And as was said on the commentary,
Gabe Bell got one of them.
Gabe Bell got one of them, right. Either way, it'll be, as was said on comms, it'll be a life-changing moment for Kieran Elliott at age 29, having only played 7 first-class games, having a 10-wicket match against Victoria with everybody watching. What a way to do it. And that last wicket with Hanscom as well. The penultimate ball of the match, he mowed out to mid-wicket, hit the cover off it. And it would have been one of those, had it been a TV game, like a third umpire game, it would have been a third umpire check on whether it was foot touching rope or not. But amongst all of that, they elected not to take the single and not to press for 2. They just took the dot ball, which I got because he hit the cover off it. But there probably was 2 there on the basis that he caused a dive in the deep, right?
Yeah.
Didn't take the one to give it to Siddle either, which I kind of get as well, given that Hanscom was only 7 away from a ton and had held the innings together. But it was the next ball. He went across his stumps, went high up in the air, and running in from the deep at mid-wicket, the catch was taken, and Tasmania celebrate accordingly and, stay within touching distance. They were in 6th spot before this, and now they're into 4th, and Victoria are still 2nd, but it's taken something special. In a game, you got to love a game where the scores 236, 258, 291 and 249. So all 4 scores between 236 and 291. Whenever you see a game like that, especially when it ends in the last half an hour, you've seen something special.
4 scores and 7 years ago. Queensland beat New South Wales at the Gabba heavily in the end. Started big. Jack Clayton, 134. Queensland, 387. Renshaw, we're always on Renshaw watch these days, only made 8. New South Wales also got a ton out of Jack Edwards, who was batting down at number 7. So he made 108. Gilks made 66. And the rest of their top 5 made single figures. So another curious lopsided scorecard.
With Xavier Bartlett taking 4, a lot of people watching that. So Nisha and Bartlett bowling together, but it just sort of feels like, how I said earlier, there's like 5 or 6 bowlers in contention for next summer. I think Bartlett's the next one. I reckon that given he swings it away, highlights look good, played well for Australia in limited overs cricket this year, or last year rather. It just feels to me like he's 26, so a really good age to be, having gotten over the injuries that everyone gets when they're a young fast bowler. He's big as well, which doesn't hurt. And I reckon that along with Jumping Jive's fit from this shoulder surgery he's having, there'll be the other guys as their depth if they need more resources in the Ashes summer.
And Spencer Johnson, if they need a left armour, if Stark goes down, there'd be that
If they can
possibility.
get his loads up. The problem here is
Yeah.
Spencer Johnson is like, how are they going to pick him for a test match when he's not playing first-class cricket? I mean, it's different with a batter. When you're a bowler, and Simon Kadich made this point on commentary during the week, like that is not without risk, having Spencer Johnson. Yeah, because he's going to be on the circuit, right? He's going to be doing the laps of the world, and exactly what you and I spoke about when David Warner made those comments about Maxi late last year in reference to not playing enough Shield cricket. Well, that's because he was being instructed in keeping with his CA contract to play in the in the international white ball stuff at the start of the season. So it will be for Spencer Johnson. He won't have a lot of room to play Shield cricket. So, yeah, it's a careful balancing act with scheduling as ever.
Well, they might need to pull him out of some white ball stuff in order to give him the opportunity to do that and make sure there's a possibility. But, yeah, when you look at that next rank, injury pending, where you've got Bartlett, Johnson, Lance Morris, Jai Richardson, and even Nisa still as a senior option, 3 for 32 at 2 runs and over. Like that's a pretty strong next 5 after your first 5 as well. Anyway, third innings of this match, Renshaw comes good, 125 not out in setting a lead. Important to have that back end of the season while they see whether the Constas thing works out through the middle of the year. Jack Clayton makes another 76 on track for twin tons and has to retire hurt. You saw with the Constas thing what twin tons in a Shield game can do for you. So that's a real blow, not just on the stats basis, but the stats make people pay attention.
Yeah, made runs for Aussie A as well, didn't he, Jack Clayton, in the other week? So he's been in the runs at the right time. So, yeah, what were they left there? 400 plus, weren't they? New South Wales, 418 to win, which would have been monumental. But
well, that wasn't likely to happen. But, yeah, Jimmy Pearson, just have a note for him, 44 not out after 36 in the first. I keep saying good player, get him in there. Do they need a wicket keeper? Any room for a wicket keeper bat in the Australian Test team at the moment? Probably not. Now, they declare it 289 for 3. Steckety and Tom Straker take the early wickets. They're 89 for 6 at one stage. New South Wales trying to chase in the end, all that for 229. Lose by 188. Orion Philippi, Cruel Intentions, makes 80. And Curtis Patterson didn't make any in the game, didn't make any, Adam, but I'm just going to say this. He made 18 and 1. You know who else made 18 and 1 in a match? Bradman on debut. I'm just saying. It presaged good things to come. Big things happened. Who else has a higher average than Bradman? Curtis Patterson. Just floating it.
Meant to be.
Just floating it.
You might have buried the lead here in the news of this game, though, Jeff, is that Sam Constas made 3 from 33 in the first innings. So the Constas returning back to Shield cricket to play at the Gabba. For the first time, he nicked off to Bartlett. And in the second innings, chasing 418, he immediately played a reverse ramp and got away with it, but was out for 22 to Straker. Caught by Bartlett. I'm not sure where he was dismissed, but 22 from 36. So
getting real, say the line Bart sort of energy from Constas with the reverse scoop now. He's just contractually obliged to play it.
Maybe. It's going to be, I come back to my earlier point about that. As we sort of move on to 4-day cricket in other parts of the world, we've seen during the week that Mohamed Abbas has moved to Notts, and we're in that sort of time of year when signings are being made, overseas players are being hoovered up. Of course, Abbas, who was part of the Hants mega attack for years, so that's a big structural shift for them. I mentioned Cam Green to Notts, to Gloss rather, where he'll play some cricket before the World Test Championship final. But I genuinely think it's Lee Watson that manages Constas. They've got to get him over to England. They're duty bound to get some 4-day cricket into him in England. If they want to open with him in the WTC final, and they're going to, right? That's fine. That's good. Great. Whatever. But they can't do it in the absence of him playing some cricket in England. That would be, especially when surely he'd be great for, I don't know, using the footy, the Premier League jargon, he'd be great for shirt sales, right? Like getting Sam Constas would get people through the gate because he's such a, not just a watchable cricketer, but people are fascinated by him. Whether it's Middlesex or somewhere else.
All the people who'd like to come in and say, we did that first, they want to be there as well.
Well, it was Phil Hughes in 2009 who broke all the records at Middlesex for a month before the 09 Ashes. I know he didn't play a lot in that series, but similar age profile and similar prodigious talent. So I wonder whether they can make that happen. The other thing in England is that the under-19s had a win against South Africa, and Archie Vaughan took a 6 for. I reckon he'll be a bolter for an England squad before you know it. I'm not saying he's going to play in the Ashes next summer, but, given he's primarily a batter and keeps taking big bags of wickets with his excellent off-spin, he will be someone who they are drawn to.
We
Yeah.
Rocky Flintoff at 17 and Jim Vaughan with Jacob Bethel at 3.
Yes. Well, Bethel's injured. It's worth just noting that Bethel's out of the Champions Trophy, isn't he? Yeah, no, totally. I think we missed that on the way through, that Bethel's hurt himself over in India. So, Jeff, why don't we finish with a place that we used to go to all the time on the show? We used to end our weekly shows years ago with Bannermans that people would send through. And there was a Bannerman during the week in a West Indies domestic game. Kaveem Hodge, who we've seen play for the national team, Hodge played against Australia last year.
Played so well at the Gabba.
He did. Got 126 out of 166 all out, which is a 75.9%. That's a big old Bannerman.
Unbelievable. That's
a
massive.
Huge Bannerman. He was eventually caught by Josh Da Silva for 126 out of 166. So 3 sundries. And apart from that, a couple of 9s. No one else made it out of double figures.
Well, that's cool.
That's I'm not sure what comp that was in, but it was can't even tell from the scorecard. But yes, they did lose that game. You won't be surprised to learn by an innings of 176.
It's the West Indies first class comp, right? The Inter-Island comp.
Yeah. Which
between it was Windward
Red
Islands
Stripe
that he was up against
years ago.
Yeah. What was the one they were playing in the 70s or 80s? The like cool mint challenge or something. Right. It was sponsored by some cigarette company, of course.
Jeff, that's been a very long episode. I think that's us done. I mentioned it off the top, but thank you again to everyone who's joined us on Patreon, and to anyone who wants to get on board with us. It's the right time to do so. Email us, info@finalwordcricket.com. Join up with us for 2024. You won't regret it. Join us on Patreon. 2025 even. We'll get Max here to call you. Not that we fold him, but it'll be fine.
We'll get Pranav Dhanavade to call you. We'll get Pradyan Ojha to call you. You're going to have a lot of calls. Answer your phone.
Yeah. Please don't get angry about the Pete stuff earlier. If you're super cross about it, like, email us or write to us. Don't go nuts on socials. I think that nothing gained by that at this point. We've done the best we can there in a tough situation. I hope I haven't misrepresented anybody. We've just done the best we can do, and we thought it was the right place to address it. So, we'll move on from that.
That's been the final word. We'll be back with a story time as soon as we can, which has fallen by the wayside, regrettably, the last couple of weeks. So
we're doing one. We're doing one this weekend. Don't worry. There'll be a really interesting final frontier app that'll go out between times, and then there'll be story time. And then once we've got into next week, when I'm back in Oz with you, we will be nearing our Champions Trophy dailies, and that'll be great having different people hosting the pod in addition to Cam and Norcross, who you all know well.
Yes, we will have Andrew, Fidel Fernando will be involved, and Danielle Rasul will be involved as well. All of whom have been on the show before and been part of what we do here. So it's nice to get the extended family in. That's it. That's been the final words. We'll see you when we see you or when you hear us. That's how podcasts work. Until then.
All right. Bye.